been great to have you in the course. I love seeing your active engagement, participation. You're really adding a lot. So I appreciate you having you there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm finding the course really helpful thus far. So yeah, it's
Awesome.
awesome.
So glad to hear it. So tell me a little bit about what's going on for you and how I could help.
Yeah, so, I've been trying to navigate the LSAT right now. I actually got a subscription to the LSAT Hub with all of the practice tests. So right now I'm just trying to work through some of the quizzes and things like that. And I'm finding that the older prep tests, like from I think it's 20 to I think 30 or so, those ones are a little bit hard for me in terms of LR. And I'm wondering if there's like a language change between those and the newer ones, such as like prep test 60 and above.
That's a
Because
good
I'm finding,
question.
yeah.
The exam has gradually and slowly evolved over time. I think the ones in the 20s and 30s are fairly similar overall. I think really pre-20 is when you're going to see a lot of differences, and especially little
Mhm.
nuances in language because it was actually written by a different company before that. But 20s and 30s should be roughly the same. I think what you'll notice especially is that with the 60s, the question stems are a little bit trickier. They'll use different words and phrases to refer to common question types. But that's a question stem thing. Are you thinking more about the stimulus?
Yeah, like I'm reading some of the stimulus and I noticed that some of like the language and like the older prep test has really been tripping me up. And I'm not sure what it is necessarily, but I heard from, I think, another student that the language kind of changed between the older prep tests and like the newer ones. And that way we should just kind of look towards like the ones that were written in like the 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, I could say overall more recent is certainly more relevant. One
Hmm.
other change I could note, not really a language change, but more of a format change, is that a lot of the logical reasoning has gotten less formal logic based. So
Hmm.
diagramming was never really that useful on the majority of questions. It's become even less useful overall. So that is another change I could note. But let me ask you, when are you taking the LSAT? What's your target test date?
Yeah, so I'm registered for October 3rd, so it's coming up pretty soon. I think I'm getting there, but I do have some problems with like my timing, and sometimes I do trip up on reading comprehension or the LR section, and I completely just vomit. So I'm
I hear that.
wondering like how to like increase efficiency, but also not compromise my performance.
Yeah. So one thing I could say is that since you're taking it October, about 4 months away or so, 3, 4 months,
Hmm.
you don't need to be doing LR from the 20s and 30s, especially since there's 2 sections of LR per exam. You could focus on the 50s and up, and that would be more than enough. And if you complete it
Hmm.
all, you could redo it again and review in depth whatever gives you trouble. So if you're finding the stuff from the 20s and 30s just isn't working for you, and that's less relevant to you, then don't even bother.
Okay, cool. That sounds really good, actually. Okay. Do you also recommend taking like prep tests now? I know that it's 3 months away, but I'm wondering if I should also be working on my stamina and taking like the 4 sections right now, all in one sitting, or am I going to burn myself out if I do that?
Do you feel like you have a strong foundation?
I think in certain sections, like I'm not doing time sections because I find that when I do timed, that's when I start to burn out. So I've been doing like the law sections, games, as well as the reasoning. I've kind of been able to do like 2 or 3 sections in one sitting, but I can't seem to do the fourth one. So yeah.
Well, you don't need to do 4 in 1 sitting back to back. Of course, you
Hmm.
do get a break. And so, assuming October will be in person, not an online LSAT Flex, you'll have 3 sections back to back, short break, 2 more back to back. I
Hmm.
get the sense you've got a good general familiarity with the different question types and such. So, if that's the case, it's not too early for you to do timed sections or full length exams. And burnout is certainly real, but
Hmm.
test day is going to involve those time sections back to back in that way. So it is worth starting to expose yourself to that given a basic fluency in the language of the LSAT overall. But don't do them every day. Maybe do 1 or 2 a week. If that's the balance you need to get that exposure to building the stamina and also working on your pacing.
Yeah, definitely. Because I'm just wondering, like, how often I should be practicing a day. I do know that I have like your schedule, and I have tried to alter that to work towards my schedule so that it fits nicely. But I'm wondering, like, if I should be practicing like 1 to 2 hours, or if it should be more like 3 to 5.
Well, what are your other obligations?
So right now I am at home, but I am doing like a competition. So I do muting on the side, as well as some club and organization work, as well as online school. So I'm kind of busy, but I'm not like super duper busy. Like I have some stuff on my plate, but it's not like a full-time job at this point in time.
Yeah. So sounds like 1 to 2 hours a day might be more than enough most days, but there could be some days where you can do more. Like if your weekends are
Definitely.
more open-ended, then yeah, do 3 to 5 hours on the weekends and do 1 to 2 hours a day on the weekdays, while acknowledging it's okay to take a day off here and there. Totally fine. You've got several months till the exam, and it really is a marathon, not a sprint, especially if burnout is a potential risk for you.
Yeah, I think that right now, I'm kind of falling into like the quicksand, I guess is what they call it, where I feel like I have to practice every single day, and then if I don't, I'm gonna end up failing, or I'm gonna miss something that I won't be able to recover later on. And so as time progresses, and I know September is going to be approaching quite fast too, I'm gonna know that like my schedule is gonna change. I took a research thesis program too, so I know that it's gonna be a lot more, work, a lot more rigorous work for school. So I'm wondering, with that big shift, how could I alter my study schedule now to really fit and have it be effective when things start to get tough, I guess?
Yeah, good question. So the schedule is more important for the level of specificity it contains about what to do than the exact day by day breakdown. So you can work through more of it now, especially making the most of your weekends if that's when you have more free time. And then by the time September rolls around and things get busier, presumably, then you could simply do timed exams and review them, and that's it. So you could have September be one timed exam a week plus review, or maybe two timed exams a week plus review, and that's it. By that point, you've already got the foundation. You've already worked on your pacing strategies a bit. It's just a matter of keeping the stamina up and maintaining that flow so that test day, October 3rd, is like just any other one of the dozen plus prep tests timed sittings you've done up to that point.
Okay, that sounds good. I also have some questions related to the actual law school admissions process. With everything related to like COVID and all of the schools like kind of taking a different approach, I guess, to their programs. I'm wondering, how is that going to have like an overall effect on the application process this fall? And are they potentially going to open up maybe something in the winter where we could apply later on, so that we are able to kind of have more like room of whether we decide to apply to law school? If things change, then we can kind of, alter that schedule, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So with the caveat that I'm not
Hmm.
super well versed in all the details of the Canadian process specifically, I'll just speak based on my
Hmm.
general knowledge. And as we discussed, we can look into the Canadian specifics later, maybe get some of those professionals to offer their insights on that. Overall, I don't see COVID having too much of an impact on the admissions process specifically, because they all can work remotely quite easily. They've been doing that up to this point. They can review applications remotely as well. Where it does have an
Yeah.
impact is if it impacts the number of applicants. And what we might,
Yeah.
so that's the biggest impact. And for the cycle that's finishing up now, it may lead to a reduction in the number of students choosing to go to law school, which may lead law schools to pull applicants off the wait list even later in the cycle. What could
Wow.
happen for
Okay.
you? Yes, that's what we see. That's not affecting you though. That's the previous cycle for you.
Oh, I see. So like the people before would have probably been affected by this because people are pulling out. Oh, I totally get it. Yeah, because I'm a little bit concerned with, this summer, for example, that could have been an opportunity to like work and, get some experience, right? And so there's a huge gap in that resume right now where it's like, most of the things are online. I know like my last semester, even though I did very well overall, I'm afraid that COVID may have an impact on the way that the law school admissions process will view my grades, and maybe say, oh, well, maybe they're higher because of COVID, because she was able to work in a remote location. So it might have been easier. So I'm wondering, like, will, my grades or the activities that I do at this point in time and throughout this COVID situation have an effect when I'm applying for the fall term?
Well, that's a good question. So they are understanding of
Yeah.
all of that. They're well aware that COVID has an impact, and if anything, they're more impressed with whatever you've done during COVID, because maybe you
Yeah.
could argue it's easier to do everything remotely, but for some people, it's a major disruption. And so I think
Yeah.
overall, they're going to just take all of spring semester and summer with a little bit of a grain of salt. You could get a quote unquote free pass if things don't go that smoothly for whatever reason. And if you have a gap
Yeah.
on your resume, totally understandable. Tons of people's internships and jobs got canceled. Totally fine.
Yeah, because one thing that a lot of people were concerned about where I am is because everything is online, people consider that a little bit easier, the students or the population. So I guess it's an assumption. It's definitely not something that has been confirmed at all. But with all of that worry of everything shifting online and things being more accessible than ever, there's that worry as well that that's going to translate onto, transcripts and resumes and things of that nature.
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't worry too much about it. And just simply, if you're concerned, you could write an addendum, but if there's nothing particular to be talking about there, then I wouldn't feel obligated to write an addendum simply because of COVID, because everybody has their own way that COVID impacted them, either to help them or to hurt them. And admissions will understand that. But ultimately, at least in the American context, it is primarily numbers driven. And so they're going to want to see the numbers regardless. If someone's GPA wasn't as high as it could have been, maybe you take some more classes to balance that out, or you put more work into the LSAT side of things to boost up that number. And the last thing I'll say about the admissions impact that is related to your cycle, so those who are applying in fall and winter 2020 to start law school in fall 2021, is there may be a spike in applications just because the opportunity cost is lower. People don't really have much else to be doing, possibly with career growth. And so they might want to go to law school to wait out any recession or depression that could happen, hoping that things will get better 3 years from now. So that is a possibility. Yeah. But whatever the impact is, of course, getting the higher numbers is the best thing you can do.
Right. So let's just say that, with the LSAT, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer on my side, but if I don't score high on that and I wanted to focus on my overall cumulative GPA, let's say I don't get in this round, am I able to kind of take another year off for graduation, extend it, and then get a higher cumulative GPA? Is that something that you recommend? Or would you recommend just focusing on the LSAT and really just trying to get that high mark and balance it out with a moderately high GPA?
Getting a higher LSAT score is probably going to be quote unquote easier than doing an entire year of college to raise your GPA a little bit, because your GPA, let's say you've done 4 years, now you're going to do 5 years. That extra fifth year is only going to then be 20% of your GPA. Even if you rock it, it can only pull it up so much. But retaking the LSAT, even let's say you've only taken it once, hypothetically, you take it a second time and a third time, through luck alone, you could do a few points better. And that would have a much larger impact than the 20% increase in most cases I would expect. So I would say you're probably going to get more bang for your buck with the effort you put into retaking the LSAT, whether you increase through luck alone or through additional studying and understanding and such, or let's say you did a flex exam administration versus a digital LSAT administration, maybe that would have some differences there too.
Okay, cool. I think that's all the questions that I have today written down. So I appreciate you coming on here and answering them.
Of course, I'm glad to help. But before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
Okay, just kind of hearing about how COVID is going to have an impact on my cycle and what kinds of things will kind of come out of that. I think that's really important to know, as well as, understand going into this process.
Awesome, Jasmine. So, well, thanks for chatting with me, and I'll see you in class soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.